let's talk a little bit about your edits to Mark Zuckerberg's op-ed here. What would you say were the biggest takeaways from your vantage point?
Well, I was just, it was more of a joke kind of column. I was rewriting it completely, and the whole idea was, it was kind of a somewhat of a dull essay of things he said before, and there wasn't a lot of meaning around it, and so I was trying to say what he said, what he meant to say, or what he really meant. And so different things about their business model and how they're manipulating users and things like that. It was mostly a joke, but I thought his column was pretty awful, and so I just thought I'd rewrite it for him.
The timing seems really interesting to me. The fact that he would release this report about a week before we get Facebook earnings. Do you think it's sort of his way of trying to explain the business model and what could be a very strong earnings report?
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be a strong earnings report despite all these issues. And so if I were him, I guess, you know, the problem is the reason it prompted me to write it, someone who really likes him said if he says something, he's in trouble. If he doesn't say something, he's in trouble. I would veer towards saying nothing. I think he talked a lot on Capitol Hill. They've been on the I'm Sorry tour for a while, both he and Sheryl Sandberg, the COO. And I felt like if you're going to write something substantive, and which is why I sort of took it apart, is this was a lot of the greatest hits of the things he's talked about in that we don't sell your data, which I think not a lot of people think they actually do that. Most people understand the basics of an advertising business. And I think I made a joke that they don't hand a disc over your intermittent fasting postings at P&G or something like that. Most people do understand that. It was just sort of, again, if you're going to write something in the Wall Street Journal, say something. And so that was my whole premise of it. I think he's sort of stuck no matter what he does in this case, and probably in that case, since he's relatively inarticulate about the problems, I would probably not say a whole lot, but that's just me.
Yeah, Karen, my issue with what he wrote was that it addressed concerns that I don't have as a user or as a tech observer, saying things, of course, yeah, they don't do this, they don't do that. But he didn't address the spread of bad information on Facebook and how bad information seems to spread so much more virally than good information does. At least, you know, that's my just sort of qualitative. I don't have specific data on that, but how is Facebook going to change, or is it really interested in changing the way it's engineered around information?
Yeah, it didn't really spin forward, did it? And it was meant to, it left out like Cambridge Analytica, it left out data leakage, it left out hacking, it left out the Russians. Anything that we have been talking about that Facebook doesn't want to talk about, he didn't talk about. And he addressed issues nobody really has with Facebook necessarily. We all understand it is an information vacuum that's pulling in all our information and then it's spitting it back as advertising. And services, by the way, good services, and some of which are good and some of which have had problems. So it was sort of a weird, you know, it's sort of like, we're going to talk about Howard Schultz in a minute, like, we serve coffee and it's not too hot. And sometimes people, it was odd. So I just made fun. I just had a good time. And so I'm sure I wasn't meaning to be mean about it.
One thing that investors are trying to figure out ahead of earnings this quarter and the quarters to come is how much costs are going to rise. So they've been dealing with this problem in part by hiring more people and backing some AI to sort of vet content and make sure that our privacy is more protected. Where are they in that cycle of spending? How much more do they have to go?
Well, we don't know yet. I mean, we know they've been spending a lot. And the problem is their business was so inexpensive to operate because they weren't operating it properly. And so now they have to hire people and they have to do more computing. They've got to do a lot more things to make the platform better. And that costs money. And so one of the issues is they weren't monitoring it correctly. And I think Sheryl Sandberg talked about that last week in Europe. Is the idea is that we didn't do enough, and now doing enough costs money, and so maybe it's not quite the fantastic business that everyone thought it was if they have to be cleaning up almost continually. And so we'll see the numbers. Maybe they'll figure out a computer AI way to do this. Maybe, I don't quite know how they're going to clean it up, but that's their job now, to clean it up, and I think people have that expectation.